So I am first going to tell you about who we have the pleasure and joy of speaking with as panelists today, and then I'll hand it over to my colleague who will be moderating the remainder of the discussion. I'm going to start by introducing Bonita J. Hamilton. She has been lauded for her role as Shenzi, the hyena, in the Tony Award-winning Broadway musical, The Lion King. Bonita J. Hamilton is a highly decorated actress, singer, voiceover artist, and speaker. Her 15-year tenure on Broadway also includes 3 Broadway workshops for The Color Purple, The Legend of Stagecoach Mary, and Mandela the Musical. Her voiceover performances include roles on ESPN's NBA Countdown, Marvel's Wolverine podcast, and commercials for Marzetti, Walmart, and Novartis. She's done work on the Academy Award-nominated film Can You Ever Forgive Me? And the animated series Through the Woods. Hamilton has performed solo as a vocalist on Good Morning America and at NBA games. Her body of work also includes recurring roles on HBO's The Nick and NBC's Manifest. She holds a BA from Alabama State University and an MFA from Brandeis University. Hamilton is a certified teacher and practitioner of Frank Silvera's being acting technique. And she mentors high school theater students as well as students from her undergraduate alma mater. That is Bonita J. Hamilton, and we are thrilled to pieces to have, that's right, we do that, we can do that, yes, to have her here with us. Oh, I see that we've lost my picture because it's going to my other one. Okay. The next person that we have the pleasure and joy of bringing to you today is Deb Bondarin. Now, she graduated from Brandeis with a BA in theater arts and art history. She's based in New York City and holds an MFA in directing from Brooklyn College. She's the artistic director of Astoria Performing Arts Center and the associate artistic director of Prospect Theater Company. She is also a freelance director of new and established plays and musicals. Recent credits at Astoria Performing Arts Center include directing a revival of Caroline or Change, which received the AUDELCO Viv Award for Best Musical Revival in 2019. And she's directed the NYC premiere of the solo musical Marguerite, starring Tony winner Katie Huffman. With Prospect Theater Company, Deb produces and directs an annual musical theater lab with commissions musical theater writers to write new short musicals all on a central theme. That is Deb Bondarin, and we're so excited to have her with us as well today. The third out of 4 panelists is Denitsa Bliznakova. She's a professional costume designer and a full professor at San Diego State University. At SDSU, she's head of the Graduate Design and Technology program in the School of Theater, TV, and Film. Denitsa's theater design work has been seen nationwide in venues, including, here's a list, the Geffen Playhouse, Mark Taper Forum, Old Globe Theater, La Jolla Playhouse, South Coast Rep, Pasadena Playhouse, Denver Center for the Performing Arts, the Kennedy Center, Cleveland Playhouse, Williamstown Theater Festival, and others. She has worked all over the place. Denitsa's work for opera includes productions at the Los Angeles Opera, San Diego Opera, and Santa Fe Opera. Costume design credits for other media include film and music videos. Denitsa has nominations for Outstanding Costume Design from LA Stage Alliance and Colorado Theater Guild. She's also the 2020 recipient of the Costume Design Award from the Costume Society of America. That is Denitsa Bliznakova, and she is with us this evening as well. Our final panelist is Renita Martin. She's a critically acclaimed author, thespian, musician, and producer. She's appeared in off-Broadway, regional, and international theater productions, as well as independent films and broadcast television. Renita is the author of Rhythm Visions, Never Do Be Finished. I love saying that title. Rhythm Visions, Never Do Be Finished. And Shotgun Wedding, published by Samuel French. She has contributed to several anthologies and written music for various media, including the currently running podcast, Who Your People Is. Some of her award-winning plays include Five Bottles in a Six-Pack, Lo She Comes, and Blue Fire on the Water. Renita's numerous awards include Ebony Magazine's and Pine Sol's Unsung Hero Award, the Telly Award for Best Music Video, and the All Out Arts Fruité Award for Outstanding Play, among others. Renita is a founding director of Rhythm Vision's production company and serves as a guest artist at Brown University's Wright and Reason Theater. And she just had one line that I had to include here in the bio and the introduction. I think it speaks for actually many of us here tonight. Renita adores the living artist and is blessed and inspired by her vibrant peers. She is honored to be creating at this moment during these soul-defining times. That is Renita Martin, folks. We are so thrilled and pleased to have her here with us this evening. The last piece of work that I have to do with you this evening is to introduce you to my colleague who will be moderating the discussion. That is none other than Michelle Simone Miller. She also comes out of Brandeis and is an NYC-based actress with credits in television, film, commercials, and off-Broadway. More interestingly, probably for her in this moment, is that she is also the host of Mentors on the Mic podcast, which has featured quite a number of notable Brandeis alumni in the field of entertainment. Without any further ado, I hand you over to the very capable Michelle Simone Miller.
Wow. Thank you so much, Malik. Those intros, those bios were fantastic. And thank you, Malik. We really sort of spearheaded this event together, but he did so much in getting, these incredible panelists. So thank you, Malik, for everything. I want to make sure that he gets his due because he's phenomenal as a person and as a theater artist. So thank you guys all for coming. Thank you to the panelists for doing this. This is going to be an incredible event. It's entitled How to Break Into and Move Up in Theater. So we're going to cover a lot of ground. I wanted to give us an idea of what the agenda will be. So for the next few minutes, I'm going to do an intro to the Arts Alumni too. We're going to do some polling questions to get our audience engaged and to see, where they're coming from, what they're really interested in this panel. If at any point in the entire, the event, I want you to write in the chat box below. There's a chat feature. Just write some questions, write some feedback, be engaged with us. I'm going to give us about 15 minutes at the end. So between, I'm going to do Eastern Standard Time, 8 to 8:15, or, Pacific would be 5 to 5:15. Just some, no, that's not right. Yeah, whatever. Anyway, yeah, that's right. So just a little bit of question answer period, to ask the panelists. And then what else? So yeah, we're going to go over how these wonderful people started in the industry, how they moved up, and if at any time along the way, if you have any questions, feel free to send them over. We're going to cover a lot. So right now, in terms of polling questions, we really wanted to know, are you a Brandeis student? Are you a graduate? Are you just a family friend, or, interested in Brandeis events? If you maybe saw the Facebook group or saw an email from a friend, we just kind of wanted to have an idea of who's out there. Who are you guys? This is also being recorded. So if at any point you want to send this later to someone, you say, hey, this was a really great theater panel that covered a lot of really great information, please feel free to do that. They're going to give us the wonderful results soon. In the meanwhile, the Brandeis Arts Network is a group exclusive to Brandeis undergraduate and graduate alumni that enables anyone involved in the arts, both professionals and enthusiasts alike, to engage, share, and experience the vast array of artistic endeavors of fellow Brandeisians on campus, across the country, and abroad. The Brandeis Arts Network also encompasses and supports the efforts of the Performing Arts Network and the Brandeis Alumni in Film and Television. Great. So we seem to have mostly Brandeis graduates. Lovely. We have a lovely alumni here. And then it's pretty sort of even on current students and others. So thank you guys so much. We have a good idea of who's out there, and that really helps us figure out what we want to be able to focus on. And then also, why are you here? Are you interested in starting a career in theater? Are you interested in growing your career in theater? Do you want to maybe pivot to a different sort of area in theater? Do you just have a general interest, which is wonderful? Or if you just wanted to support Brandeis Arts, we appreciate you. The reason also I wanted to bring up our Brandeis Arts Network message or statement is because we're trying to put these events for you guys. I don't know if you've sort of been active or been a part of this. We had a film TV panel not too long ago. We had a networking event in entertainment. And then we did another where we featured a filmmaker's short film, and we discussed how he created it, what's to come from it. It's on Amazon right now, highly suggest it. And so we want to hear from you guys. What kind of other events did you want to do? We've heard people say we want a theater panel, so we put that together. So as you answer this, if there's at any point, if you think I have an idea for an event, please write down the chat box, send us a message. We're sort of available everywhere. We'll kind of talk about ways to reach us later. So why are you here? Let's find out. So mostly a little bit more, I'm interested in starting a career in theater. Great. I'm interested in growing my career in theater, general interest, support Brandeis Arts. We love it. So it's pretty kind of even mostly. Love it. Thank you guys. All right, here we go. So we have a lovely array of people here. Did we lose someone? I don't know if we see, maybe, there we go, Renita.
Yeah, for some reason, we lost my video here.
Okay, great. So thank you guys again for coming, for being a part of this. If you guys wanna, you can unmute yourself either before you speak or during, whatever you feel like. Let's start with Dev. Dev, how did you start in the industry? What was your first role, either out of Brandeis or in entertainment? How did you get involved?
It's a great question. I've been thinking about that. So I majored in theater and art history at Brandeis as an undergrad, and I was really involved both in department shows, but also in the undergraduate theater clubs. And definitely earlier on in my work in New York off Broadway, I would often tell people that it was really both of those experiences, but the on the ground work with the theater clubs that really prepared me for self-producing and for, you know, sort of putting things together the way that the clubs operated. So that was a really excellent experience. So if there's anyone out there who's been part of an undergraduate theater club, it mirrors putting on your own work pretty well. Get ready. So that was a really big help. I sort of did everything in undergrad. I designed sets. We don't need to talk about that. I stage managed, I produced, and then I decided I wanted to direct. And that was sort of like the last thing that I came to. And it was really useful that I had all of the experiences before that, because it really gave me a greater understanding of, you know, all the necessary elements that go into putting on a show and everyone's job, etc. And when I graduated, you know, directing work it's hard to come by right away. So I went into stage management. I actually stage managed in the Brandeis theater department for a year. And then I decided I didn't want to be a stage manager anymore. And I got an internship at a theater company in Maine. And I moved up to Maine, where it's even colder than Boston. And I lived there for almost a year doing a directing and dramaturgy program, which allowed me to assist. And that was a really big new thing for me, you know, and really wonderful experience. And from there, I applied to grad school. I grew up in New York City and knew that I was eventually going to move back there. Yes, exactly. That I was going to move back to New York. And so I applied to Brooklyn College, which is part of the city university system. And literally, like, my one break from the internship program in Maine, I interviewed with the head of the department and got into the program. And it was the only program I applied to. So I sort of thought, you know, well, I'm going back to New York anyway, so let's see what this is. And so I went to Brooklyn College 2 years after undergrad, where I got a lot of hands-on experience, you know, because the program is in New York City. There is a lot of opportunity to, you know, meet people and to be seeing shows and to sort of, you know, research, you know, where your groove is, where your people are. And so, you know, while I had a lot of good experiences during grad school, I was also able to, you know, get to know some of the companies in New York. And actually the company that I'm the associate artistic director of, I started working with them. For all undergraduates out there, this is true. I started working with them as an intern my second year of grad school. And so that was a really pivotal thing that happened that at the time I had no idea. I thought I was doing this, you know, semester long gig and I was going to, you know, maybe work with them again. And I really hit it off with the head of the company, who's still the head of the company and a dear friend. And it led to, you know, now 15 years of collaboration with this wonderful company. And it's really that company that put me in the position that I was in to be able to feel ready to apply for the artistic director position that I have. And I also met my significant other, who's now my husband, through that company. And so you never know how these things go together.
Yeah.
And so, you know, a lot of other things have happened along the way, but it was sort of grads, you know, Brandeis to Maine to Prospect to Astoria to other things.
That's amazing. And so first of all, that's great that like not only did you meet your partner, but you have this like lifelong relationship with a theater company. You don't see that all the time. And then you stayed in New York. So I'm definitely going to pivot back to you because I definitely want to hear sort of how you sort of moved up at Prospect and also, you know, with Astoria. But, you know, it's really great to, I think, for people to know, like, out of Brandeis, what was the next step, which was that you were an assistant director for, I think, a year, you said, in Maine?
It was almost a year. It was almost a year long program.
Yeah, and that was at the Vineyard Theater, was it?
No, it was at Portland Stage Company.
Oh, see, good.
Although
we have a lot of Mainers here.
I did assist at the Vineyard, so you've read my.
Oh, okay. So yeah, cool. Yeah, you know, I was like, I think that was it. And then you went to grad school, and then that's when you started as an intern. So I think that's super important. Awesome, wonderful, thank you. And then let's go to Bonita. How did you start right out of? I mean, you got your MFA at Brandeis. So what was your first sort of initial step into theater after, or even before that, whatever you?
Let's see. Hi, everyone. Before I got to Brandeis, I had been working at the Alabama Shakespeare Festival. I graduated from Alabama State University, and I started with the American Negro Playwright Theater in Nashville. And then I started doing work at ASF. And then Dr. Tommy Tania Stewart, who is my mentor, and she was the director of theater at Alabama State when I was there, she told me, you need to go to graduate school. You need to hone in on the craft if you are serious about it. And that was the best advice. And she said, Michael Murray is coming and you're going to audition for him. I said, but Dr. Stewart, I want to have to work. I have to go here and do this and I have to jet set. So I auditioned for Michael. I came to Brandeis, and it was one of the best decisions that I've ever made in my life. 2 weeks out of grad school, I booked Ain't Misbehavin' at the Capitol Repertory Theater in Albany, New York. And while I was doing Capitol Rep, that was 2 weeks out of graduate school.
Wow.
2 months out of graduate school, I had an audition while I was doing Ain't Misbehavin' for The Lion King and The Color Purple world premiere in the same day. And I booked both of them.
Oh my God.
So I had to make this decision, and I called Dr. Stewart. I said, Dr. Stewart, what should I do? I said, The Lion King or The Color Purple, which I will be originating a role. It's a brand new thing and every actor wants to originate a role. And Dr. Stewart said, Lion King. And I said, but Dr. Stewart, it's going to be at the Alliance Theater. It's going to be amazing. And everybody who does the role behind me has to do it just like me. And she said, Lion King, call me when you sign your contracts. And so I said, well, all right. So 2 months after I graduated from Brandeis University, I booked my first Broadway show, which, well, actually two, The Color Purple and The Lion King. I decided to go with The Lion King. And I've been doing the role of Shenzi, the principal role of Shenzi, which for people don't know who Shenzi is. So if you've ever seen the movie, it's the Whoopi Goldberg character. She's the head hyena. And then 6 months after I booked that, they called me to do The Color Purple Broadway workshop, pre-Broadway workshop. So there it is.
That's phenomenal. So actually, this made me think of a question. Can you take me, I didn't know both those auditions were the same day.
Same day.
Can you take me through that day?
Oh my God, I would be more than happy to.
It's like the actor in me. It's like, what?
Yes. So the off day at Albany, at the Albany Rep, I think it was Sunday. And so my auditions were Monday. So I drove down Sunday night to Brooklyn, where actually I met my husband at Brandeis. So we just celebrated 15 years of marriage. So Deb's a newlywed, and congratulations. But
congratulations.
You know, a lot of good things came out of Brandeis. But so I drove down Sunday night. Monday, I had to prepare. Had never ridden the subway before. I'm from Montgomery, Alabama. So New York was this whole new thing, but my husband's mother and my husband, they prepared me. They put me on the 3 train to Times Square. I went in I was dressed completely for the Color Purple audition. Oh. I walked in and the casting director, Mark Brandon, said, okay, Shenzi ain't cute. Kick those heels off. I was so adorable with my dress and my makeup and everything. He said, kick those heels off and let's get to work. So he said, did you learn both parts? I said, no, I learned Shenzi. I'm auditioning for Shenzi. And he said, okay. So we read, I sang. He said, you know what? I'm gonna call you back. Wow. And I said, oh, okay. He said, come back this afternoon for the puppet audition. And I said, okay. So I came back. No. He said, come back for the creative team. It doesn't happen like that. Usually it happens, a few days later. So I left that audition and I went to the Color Purple audition and they said, we're gonna call you back. And I said, oh, okay. So I went to Brooklyn, I changed clothes, into Chuck Taylor's and a t-shirt, got back, I met with the creative team for The Lion King. They said, we wanna call you back for a puppet audition. Wow. So that was an hour later. I said, okay, I'll hang out. And I did the puppet audition. And I put the puppet on. My puppet is 30 pounds. And I walked out of that audition and I said, that is one job I do not have to get. So so the next day I got a call saying I had a meeting with Linda Twine for the Color Purple. I said, okay, but I have to get back to Albany because I have a 7 o'clock curtain. So I was on the FDR. I did the audition. I got back to Brooklyn. And for some reason, I was weeping uncontrollably on the subway, listening to the music from both shows. I don't know why, but I was. So I said, well, it's in your hands. Whatever happens will happen. Mm-hmm. And I got in the car. I was on the FDR driving back to Albany to make a 7 o'clock curtain. And I got a call from my agent and she said, you have booked the Color Purple. And then when I hit Albany, she said, you have booked The Lion King on Broadway.
Oh my God. Now that's a story.
Feast or famine for me. So that's how.
Oh, there's so much to unpack there. I had one more quick question before we move on, because it's all about how you started. So how did you get that agent? I know a lot of actors out here want to know, like, it's always catch-22. Yeah.
Okay, so Brandeis again, actually. I did a showcase. We had a Boston showcase, we had a New York showcase. And at that time, my agent was Kazarian. They were Kazarian Spencer and Associates.
Yeah.
And I did the showcase, and I think her assistant was there actually. And she called me in based upon what her assistant told her, Lori Swift. And she said, I would really like to meet with you. And I said, okay. And I was auditioning for Beehive at the Kennedy Center, and I received a call back. So I went in saying, well, I have a call back for this, and to let her know that I can work, I can book something, and that's basically it through my showcase, which was so helpful.
That's amazing. I mean, there's already been questions about how did Brandeis help you and affect you. There you go. That's one of the answers. We're going to get back to it. I'll definitely ask it again, but
absolutely.
I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So we're going to pivot slightly to Denitsa. You went to school at Parsons, and what was your first job in theater?
Yeah, absolutely. By the way, Bonita and yes, before me, you guys, your stories are so entertaining. I thought I was on the panel. Just listen to this. This is fabulous. I think everyone in this entertainment industry ends up there from the most unlikely places. And I think my story is also quite unusual. I was studying, actually, my dream was to be a lawyer. So I'm originally from Bulgaria, and in Bulgaria, there was a revolution in '89. And so in 1990, my parents decided to immigrate in the United States. And so I didn't speak a word of English. And so my dream of being a lawyer kind of got crushed. And so, but it's all about mentorship for me. I attended a couple of years at high school in Greenwich, Connecticut, and my art instructor applied for me. She said, you're really good at art. And I said, really? I was self-taught. She said, let me apply she applied for me to 7 universities. I got in all of them, they were top art schools, and Parsons ended up giving me the most money. So I just went there. But actually, one of the reasons why I ended up going to Parsons is because they had a Parsons Paris program, and I've always wanted to live in Paris. So I ended up in Paris, and of course I met fashion. And so that was the end of that. But I was doing industrial design. I wanted to design cars. Again, theater, clothing, like none of that was actually. So accidentally, I feel like I ended up in all of these situations. And once when I came back to New York City, I realized that in America, fashion was way too much business and not enough art. So I actually ended up teaching at Parsons for a year. And during that year, I ended up actually assisting on a couple of projects for a very experimental group called On Guard's Arts. And so I assisted on that show. It was like Lower East Side on the top of a roof. That's where the plays were taken. They were like these little vignettes, I mean, it was not your conventional theater. Like we were like sweating and working hard, but I kind of got the theater bug there. So I decided to go to grad school and check out this thing called theater design. And I was accepted at, I'm not going to mention the other universities, but one is in New York, one is in New Haven, and one is in Boston, Brandeis. And so I just want to say that Brandeis really gave me everything that I needed. If you've heard of interviews with Carl Eichstein, like anyone who has interviewed with Carl would tell you that he's magic. It's 3 hours of talking about who are you? Who am I? And Brandeis allowed me to really find out who I am, right? Find out if theater is for me even, right? Like I didn't know what I was getting into at my own pace, right? But that pace ended up being pretty fast. I mean, after 2 years of doing, I had only done 1 or 2 shows at Brandeis. I actually landed my first professional gig at Williamstown Theater Festival. So this story, I'm going to be brief, but I want to share it with you, especially for the students in the audience. And I shared the story with my own students because it's kind of unbelievable. After 2 years at Brandeis, very short resume, I was called and offered to be an assistant costume shop manager at Williamstown. So clueless, I said on the phone, I'll never forget talking to French Champa who called me with the offer. And I said, well, assistant to costume, but I'm a designer. I design. Pretty clueless, right? Like I should have just taken the job because Williamstown, like you go through, you're an intern for 2 years, you know, maybe you'll assist for whatever, right? So he didn't necessarily hang up the phone on me, but he said, I'll see what I could do. 2 weeks later, he called me back with a new offer. I was gonna actually assist on a main stage show and then design on the Nico stage, which I was of course ecstatic, but looking back, I just can't believe, I don't know if it was luck or whatever it was, but it was confident. It was this confidence about saying, I'm a designer. And I have not stopped saying that since then, okay? So I refuse to take anything else but design gigs for like, you know, it's been, I don't know how many years, 15, 16 years. And of course, my first show was Broadway actors, Bibi Newart, Eric Bogosian. It was the who's who in theater and TV. Michael Ritchie was the artistic director at the time. Neil Keller was the director, who is now associated with, in Los Angeles actually, with Center Theater Group. And so I met the set designer on my first professional gig at Williamstown Theater was David Correns, designer of Hamilton. He's like the top set designer currently. I work with another director, Moritz von Stuppelnagel, who did Hand to God, another Broadway show. So like all the people that I met at Williamstown Theater Festival. And by the way, 3 months, I did not sleep. It was breathing, living theater, a lot of trips between New York City and the Berkshires. And I just remember the whole time going, oh my God, I'm so clueless. What am I doing? I could do it. I could do it. I could do it. So it was a pretty wild ride from the very beginning.
There's so much there to unpack, which is great. I'm definitely going to bring up mentorship because both you and Bonita both mentioned that. And I think that's important, especially for people listening. But I also wanted to bring up with what you said about like advocating for yourself in the beginning, because that confidence is, I think, something, I mean, listen, we didn't mean for the whole panel to be women, but it's just this wonderful thing that happened. But we all read stuff that says that women don't advocate for themselves enough. And so you had the confidence. How do you think you had that confidence to go, okay, no, I'm a designer. I mean, that's so important.
I call it confidence now. It's ignorance. That's, I mean, it's a little bit like not knowing the rules, quote unquote, of the industry. I had not, this is a little bit harsh to hear, and how can I say it without using offensive words, but when I started working there as a designer, the first week somebody asked me, who did I have a relationship with to get the gig? So basically nobody believed me that I alone with my credits could get that gig. And so it was eye-opening. And over the years, I've been in all kinds of situations, right? Working really hard. But actually, I feel like not knowing that structure, and I just went for it head first. But you know what? It worked out for me that first time. So I decided I'm just going to stick with that line and see what happens. What's the worst thing that could happen? They're not going to hire you. So
and you already have experience now as a designer, so it's not like you want to move back and
absolutely.
Go down.
But I'll tell you, it was a little, looking back again, I can't believe on the phone, I told somebody who offered me a job, no, I don't want to be assistant.
It's so interesting. No, because I remember like there's this awesome thing I read once where it was like men often, and this is not a men versus women thing, but men often apply for jobs that they think, exactly, they think they could do well in, and women often apply to jobs that they feel like they've experienced with.
Yes.
So it's great that you kind of had that, whatever it is, chutzpah, audacity, balls, whatever you want to call it, to be like, I mean, even if it is ignorance, it worked out really well. And I think a lot of people,
everyone, right? But you don't have to check off all of the boxes, especially because in theater, the boxes are not defined that well. So I think if you have sort of the passion and the energy, you just have to go for it. You'll figure out everything after that.
I love that. That's so great. That's a great part to switch to Renita on, but thank you, Denise. This is amazing. Renita, welcome. Thank you. And how did you start in this industry? How did you start in theater?
Wow. Well, starting, I have to go like way, because I think I started like most of us. I'm hearing like these things of mentorship of Brandeis. And that there's a sort of sense that this is kind of in our blood, that you, there's that desire has, is always a kind of a long-standing one if you're in this one and if you're staying in it. So I think I started as a child, just even going to church and going to school. I was always a storyteller, and I'd come back and, act out the drama that I saw in church, or, especially stuff in like, if you peek in the teacher's lounge, the stuff you'd see, there. So I was always searching for drama. But I started kind of transitioning from, I started my undergraduate work at Tougaloo College in Mississippi. And I had a great mentor there, Dr. Regina Turner, who really turned me, I was in pre-med, and she kind of turned me on to theater. And I ended up transferring to Boston University and working with James Sproul, who was working professionally in theater and would always bring his students into his professional productions. So I got the opportunity to kind of meet people and work in that way. And so I was working professionally before I got to Brandeis. I kind of, both as a playwright and an actor, I kind of stumbled, I guess, into playwriting. I knew I started as a poet and always acted. But somebody asked if I had written a play, and somebody said, "Do you have a one-woman show?" And I was like, yeah, but I did not. And they were like, cool, we have this opportunity for you to do the one-woman show. I had a date and everything, but no one-woman show. So I ran and wrote a one-woman show. And that's kind of how I stumbled into, into playwriting. And then I ended up at Brandeis, wanting to learn more about it and do more with it. And that too was a phenomenal experience that kind of boosted the other experiences that I've had. Michael Weller came through. He's a fabulous playwright in his own right. He came through Brandeis while I was there and passed my script on to Angelina Fiordalisi at the Cherry Lane Theater in New York. And she recruited me, and I ended up in New York with a theater home, a place that I still call my theater home. So yeah, I kind of rolled, bobbed, weaved into.
I was like, I'm on mute. I forgot. I love that. I love that. Like, it's again, the confidence to be like, someone asks you, do you have a one-woman show? And you're like, yes, I do have I will have a one-woman show. How did you make a one-woman show? And I mean, I don't know how much time they gave you, or how did you figure that out?
It was, I think, about a month or so. And I already had some characters in my head and, some stories. And so I was like, let me just I recorded them first and then and played them out in the mirror to see if it worked. And then I'm like, okay, let me make a story. And
how long was that initial show?
It ran about 45 minutes, 45, 50 minutes. And it toured forever. It ended up being like a big,
That's phenomenal. And so what happened after that? So, I mean, obviously after Brandeis, I meant. So like.
After Brandeis, we went to New York.
To New York. And then you started at the Cherry Lane Theater. And so what kind of stuff did you do there?
Well, I did a lot of one-woman shows.
Nice.
The play that brought me, actually the same play that got me into Brandeis was the same play that kind of brought me to, that was sent to the Cherry Lane. And so we did that, did versions of other plays. It just gave me the opportunity to, anything that I knew that I was working on, I had the opportunity to, kind of play with it. And, Yeah.
That's amazing. And so what was the next thing? I guess we could start going into the next sort of question, if you will, as to how did you guys start moving up now that you have your first initial forays, maybe out of grad school? You know, how did you start moving up in the field? How did you start getting that next position, that next thing, and that next thing? Do you want to start, Renita? Yeah, because we're already on you. Yeah.
Well, a lot of it I think is meeting people. For me, it's been kind of diversifying.
Yeah.
I at some point I ended up doing some work at Brown University with the theater students there, and that kind of evolved into a longer thing. As I mentioned, the first one-woman show, well, I guess it was the second one-woman show that kind of toured and kind of got me sort of into the door of theaters. And yeah, just kind of knocked down doors. I, traveled internationally, and just anything that my goal is always keep submitting, keep sending stuff. I have 1 million rejection letters and a resume full of good stuff. So
yeah. And so how, I know you've published plays, obviously. When was the first play that you published?
I think it was a couple of years after Brandeis.
Nice.
Yeah.
Wow. And so how did that come about? How did you go around, how did you go about publishing that first one?
That actually another kind of stumble into. I was part of a playwrights festival in Boston, the Boston Theater Marathon. And the play ended up getting published as part of an anthology from that theater. And then somehow it ended up getting, Samuel French, which was at the time Concord was Samuel French, ended up publishing the play by itself as a book.
Did you find it was easier then to publish the next one? Because you had that? That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's always sort of a new, each journey feels like a new journey,
Yeah. And how did you start Rhythm Vision Production Company? I don't want to mess that one up.
I started that I think before Brandeis.
Nice.
And I started it around the time, the mid-90s, when the arts were sort of being phased out of the schools. And I had gone to a school and was asked by one of the students if I could come back and, teach a theater class, teach a playwriting class there. And I'm like, sure. And that's another sort of I'm like, okay, if I'm going to do this, I need some people to help. And so I got some artist friends together, and I'm like, there's this need. And then from that evolved into us working in shelters with folks experiencing homelessness. And then that evolved into working in prisons and juvenile detention. And then from that came creating jobs for people who had come through the programs. And so
that's incredible. Well, it's incredible for multiple reasons. One, because, it's giving back, which is amazing. But also it's like, we all been talking about like the mentorship we've received. And so now it's like, okay, well, how do I provide mentorship for other people? And I wanted to actually go into Bonita next because I know that you also provide a lot of mentorship for what we talked about. Malik mentioned in the bio that, you do a lot for high school students. So how is that important to you? And then we'll flip back to how you moved up and continued. And
I think that mentorship is something that is needed in the community. Even as I'm a middle-aged woman. I'm not going to tell my age, but I just had a birthday the other day.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. But
Leo.
I think that mentorship is needed, even for someone like me. I still refer back to Dr. Stewart. I remember early on in my career, I spoke, because I've been doing I've been doing The Lion King for 16 years now, coming up in September. Thank you. And I remember even we had a voice teacher at Brandeis, and her name was Nancy Armstrong. And I remember even calling, we called her Nan, and she's so wonderful. And I remember calling Nan and saying, Nan, I have this to do, or I'm having an issue with my voice. What do I need to do? Nan is one of my mentors also. I'm not so much in touch with her anymore, but I do believe that if I needed to call on Nan, I would be able to call her and just get some guidance on how to, because of course Nan is saying at Carnegie Hall, and and so, as well as my Dr. Stewart, she is an NAACP Image Award recipient. She's done over 50 movies. If you look her IMDb up, and then she is in the world of academia. I mentor high school students and students from the Alabama State University. I was participating in a program. I live in New Jersey with the Vanguard Theater called Broadway Buddies, and where we take on students, high school students, and I always like to bring my mentees into my world. So we first meet at the theater. You hang out backstage. You see what it is. People think that it's all, glitz and glamour. It is not. It is hard work. It is a grind. 8 shows a week with 1 day off. We have conversation. And I introduce, this young lady, her name was Indigo Blue, and I would introduce her to, she wanted to sing, but she wasn't quite sure if she wanted to do musical theater or if she just wanted to sing. She wanted to, what's the young lady's name? Billie Eilish? Is that, yeah. She was like, she just filled Madison Square Garden, and I just want to do, what? First of all, you have to get some craft. I'm like, we're working on musical theater. So anyway, I go back and I teach symposiums to the students at Alabama State University. I make myself available to the students. They know how to contact me because they need to know, and some people don't even know what to do in an audition room when they're coming out of school. You need to know, we need to have a conversation. Let me see where your head is. And I wanted to do those things for that my mentors did for me. And I want to always make myself available to my mentees. So.
Oh, I love that. I mean, I started, Malik mentioned I started a podcast recently called Mentors on the Mic for that reason. Yeah. I wanted to introduce people to journeys and roles and just information, especially since some people are not great at finding their own mentors. They just, find it very, very intimidated by the process, not sure what to ask people once they do. So it's phenomenal that you guys are doing that and putting yourself in a place, and even doing this. I mean, this is mentorship, you know what I mean? This is explaining your story, answering questions. So we thank you. Yes, profusely. Specifically, I just wanted to touch, Bonita, a little bit on, obviously right off the bat, you got Lion King, but there's also been other things you've been doing, as well as, you're a big voiceover actress. We talked about that in the bio. You've also done a couple television shows, The Nick, Manifest, films. Can you talk a little bit about that sort of progression and that came about?
Oh, gosh.
Especially with 8 shows a week. And I know some theater actors who do that. It's a lot to do 8 shows a week. And then on top of it, audition for other stuff and book stuff where you have to work your way around both.
What I tell what I tell people when they ask me is, The Lion King is the icing on top of the cake. As an actor, my job is to audition. So I don't care if I have a 6:30 half hour. I have a 10 o'clock audition the next morning, and that's important, and it deserves as much attention as I give to The Lion King. So I don't even think about the TV and film stuff. I just do it. I've even auditioned for things in the pandemic. Zoom.
Yep. Zoom auditions, man, that's a thing.
And honestly, I've learned a whole new skill set as a voice actor because I've had to build a home studio where I didn't even have a laptop because I'm not tech savvy, but I had to go. My agent called me and he said, okay, so this is what's happening. You need to get this type of mic. You need to get an interface. You need to get, and I was like, oh, and then I said, okay. And at 4:00 in the morning, I get up because that's my time to think. I go back to sleep, but something said, check your email. I checked my email and I'm a part of this Loop group where we do voiceovers for film and television. And they were checking my availability. I was like, oh, so I really have to get this set up. And then I had this audition and then I had this job, voiceover. So I became the actor and the technician overnight. And I was like, I'm not tech savvy, but I had to learn it. And so now I know it. And I've been able to help my my friends that are because Broadway is shut down. We are shut completely down. They say January. I heard we're not coming back until summer 2021. We shut down on March 11th, 2020. So now it's time to figure out what you can do. It's time to pivot. New skill set. I'm grateful that I was able to pivot. Some people can't, So, yeah.
And it's not
was
even
that
new
the question?
skills. No, it was. And it's not even new skill sets though, because the new skill sets might be the technical parts, but all that is not new because those skill sets have been worked on and trained and polished. And also some good news, because I keep getting so many messages right now. Nancy Armstrong is in fact on the call. She is watching right now. Is there any way we can get Nancy up? I don't know if that's too hard.
Oh
my!
I am here.
Where is she?
You're here.
I'm right here.
We heard her voice.
Oh man,
I'm here.
Oh, and by the way, I've had so many people also write just being like, Nancy's so amazing. We just had her, like recent graduates who are like, Nancy.
Hi, Bonita. I am here.
Man, you are the reason that I am able to sustain 8 shows a week for 16 years. The voice work, the way you taught me to take care of my instrument.
Oh, I know.
I cannot thank you enough.
Oh.
I've seen people come and go in my show, yet I am still there because of what you taught me.
Oh,
I appreciate you so much.
I love you too. Anytime you need me, you don't need me. You have done it, and it was your hard work. I had never had a voice like yours before, but together we had this sense of how to keep your instrument going, and the care that I wanted you to make sure that I instilled in you, and you did it.
You did. People say, how do you do it? And I say, I noodle. Nan tells me to noodle.
Oh, that's right. You noodle. Ooh, that's right. That's right.
Yes.
Anytime, Bonita.
Oh, that's so great. Thank you, Nancy.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
So great. I had multiple people write me being like, Nancy's on the call.
Oh my gosh. Now I'm gonna cry a river when I go.
All right, well, we'll switch because we're almost time for question answers, and I want to get Denitsa and Devin, but that was so amazing. Thank you, Nancy. This is like an unplanned thing we have on this panel. Brandeis is great. So Denitsa and Dev. So I'm gonna speak with Denitsa first. So Denitsa, how did we continue just sort of get all those credits? Because even Malik mentioned there's so many theaters you've worked with. And you kind of touched in a little bit, but how did you get from point A to point B to like all the theaters and get more and more work?
Yeah, well, I'll agree with Bonita. I think Bonita was talking about auditioning being a full-time job. As a freelance designer, what we talk about is networking is a full-time job. So while you're on like 3 shows working on design gigs, right? At the same time, you have this other full-time job, which is networking, making a name for yourself, meeting people, making connections. And so, yes, my mentors in Brandeis did help me, did open many doors for me. And there is also a designer, a Broadway designer with the name Martin Pakladinas, who passed away since then. He tremendously helped me with my move from New York City to Los Angeles, which is, we could have like a whole separate panel on anyone who's interested in moving East Coast to West Coast. And it's the scariest move. And, you know, at the time people said your connections won't transfer. But what happened was, you know, these connections helped some doors open. I always tell my students, you still have to deliver though. So just because you get a meeting, somebody decides to meet you, that doesn't mean that you'll get a gig. So for a while there was a little bit of, well, you're overqualified to work in the shop, but you're not there yet as a designer type of a deal. But really my start in Los Angeles, I think Gary Marshall, the famous, you know, film producer of all people. So he had a theater, so he passed away also not too long ago, but he has a theater in Burbank in Toluca Lake. And so I worked for him for many years. I became his resident designer there along with a couple of other people. We were a team. And so they gave me my first kind of job, and it was Hollywood on stage every night. We had so many TV personalities be on our, like, you know, stage in Toluca Lake. But I think that was a great help. In fact, I was working on Happy Days, the musical, for over 2 years with Gary when my first daughter was born. Also, we could have a separate panel about working parents, you know, in our industry. And actually, can I give a shout out to my husband, who is also a Brandeis graduate. He's from the playwriting program at MFA, and they're 2 Brandeis babies, essentially. So yes, he's from Brandeis. So our 2 daughters, yeah, the Brandeis baby in our house. But because I got pregnant with my daughter, and it was right before tech, right, of like the musical, I had to shift gears and realize, how can I continue as a working professional and be a mother? And so at that time, I realized is to bring balance in my life. I decided that I was going to apply for some teaching positions. And I landed this amazing job, which now I'm full professor. I'm a head of an MFA program, which is absolutely like absurd that I can't believe I'm saying that, but it happened. It happened when I was way too young and way too early in my career. But that really allowed me to bring that balance. And it's all about balance, right? With everyone, with all of us. How do you balance, like, you know, the Broadway show with the auditions? And then if you put like family on top of that, it gets like, it just explodes, right? And we were living in Los Angeles. I was doing a lot of work in San Diego, so traveling between the 2 cities. But in San Diego, I met, I give so much credit to, I don't know if you guys know Darko Trezhnik. He's a director. He used to be the artistic director at the Old Globe, and then also until recently the artistic director at Hartford Stage. So he gave me an interview at the Old Globe Theater along with Jerry Patch, who is a very good dramaturg, and they believed in me, you know, and that allowed me to enter the union. And I became a regular with all of the West Coast regional theaters after that. But it really takes one sort of big gig, and all you have to do is just make a name. So at Gary's Marshall, I'm just gonna say one thing about branding yourself, right? Like, who are you as a designer? I ended up having this reputation of, I could work with the most difficult personalities. And I've been told that I could have a difficult personalities, but maybe that's what allows me to work with the most difficult personalities. So when we had some difficult actors on stage, they would always call Denitsa to the rescue. And so I actually pride myself in that, is collaboration and the ability to work with everyone from all backgrounds, with all personalities. I think it's really, really important to keep grounded and to be like that. But I'll stop here and let.
No, I mean, there's so much. I mean, that's why it's hard to do these things sometimes, because it's like I could go on and on about that. I mean, what's really great also that you said is, and I understand this, all of us have this like ability for this like freelance position. And then it's like, on one hand, we want to balance that out with something that has stability to it. And so at least with the teaching position, there's a linear path to follow where you'd work here and you work this much, and now you're like the head of that program. So let's sort of pivot to Dev. Dev, I know you have, had, I think, a similar sort of linear sort of path, I think, with the theater companies. Did you want to talk a little bit about how you started moving up? You started a little,
Sure. I was reminded with the story about, saying to Williamstown that, just, not that I ever said that to Williamstown, but just the idea that you just didn't know that maybe you shouldn't say that. I was just sitting here thinking that, the assisting work that I had right after undergrad and then right after grad school, I just asked. And, sometimes when you ask, you get no response. And I had this friend in high school who used to always say, like, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? The person's going to say no. And you never know. And so my first assisting job was actually at Gloucester Stage Company. I know it's now run by a Brandeis professor, which is very exciting. But the way that I got that gig is I just called Gloucester Stage at the end of my junior year of Brandeis, and I said, I want to assist on a show. And the person who picked up the message called me back. And I sometimes think about that now, and I'm like, would I have the guts to do something like that now? I mean, I hope so, but I just think at the moment, I just did that. And like, I had the experience, and then I came back to Brandeis for my senior year, already having assisted on a show. And that was a good thing that I did. I think it reminded me that I could ask for something. So I just wanted to put that out there because the Williamstown story reminded me of that. Just sort of like doing something because you didn't know that, maybe you shouldn't. Why not? So, in terms of moving up, I was thinking about starting with this theater company in grad school, Prospect, and, my next gig with them, because I've had a couple of different titles until the title that I have now, which is probably the most prestigious, is that, after I was an intern, they are a very industrious group. If you don't know them, I highly recommend looking them up. They are dedicated to just all new musical theater. And for the earlier years that I was working with them, they would rent a theater, and they were really keen on keeping the theater in use. So if the main stage show was running Thursday through Sunday, we had something in the theater Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And so I was given the gig of overseeing all of that. So suddenly I was a producer, and suddenly all of the experiences that I had being the treasurer of Brandeis Ensemble Theater, and, directing in Nathan Seafer Auditorium, if there's anybody out there who knows what that is, came to light. And suddenly, I needed to be in contact with the people that were putting on these very small, bare bone shows. And I also got to do some of my own work. So it was sort of like a really awesome experience to be able to gain the experience of knowing how to produce, but also I got to do some creative work as sort of a thank you. And so then I moved up with the company, and we started to do this annual musical theater lab. And, I came to directing musicals later than directing plays, and it was actually the first musical theater lab that we did at Prospect that I directed my first musical ever, which was actually co-written by my husband, who I had no idea he was going to be my husband at that time. But it's kind of amazing that, I do a lot of musical theater now, and the first musical that I ever directed was written by my, future spouse. Hi, John, you are watching. So, you never know. And so from there, it just became, we want to have one person curate and put on this musical theater lab. Do you want it to be you? And this is a good example of like, I didn't know what I was saying yes to, but I said yes. I had directed one short musical, and it went well. So when the artistic director said to me, do you want to direct the whole thing next year? I thought to myself, what? I've directed 10 minutes of a musical ever, but I said yes, because of course I did. And then suddenly I had other opportunities to direct musicals, and I love directing musicals now. So, you know, it was a bit of confidence and a bit of luck that I got to move into that position. And, you know, the head of that company has really become, you know, a very close friend of mine, and also a mentor to me now that I am in her position at another theater company. And so, you know, luckily for me, my home base there still exists, even though I'm actually in the driver's seat at another small theater in New York City. Off Broadway is, you know, a very vast place with a lot going on. And the fact that, you know, I'm the artistic head of a company that's about to celebrate its 20th anniversary is, you know, a really proud thing. I didn't found the company, I'm not that old, but, you know, it was only because of the experience running these dark night shows that I even learned what it meant to try to put together something, you know, on a small budget, you know, hurting a lot of people, but also, you know, keeping that creative eye to know what you want to program.
Yeah.
So I think that sort of answers the question.
That 100% answers the question. I think I mean, that's a great time to start to pivot into question answers. I started a little bit later than I intended. Sorry, guys. But feel free to ask more questions as I start to read some of these wonderful questions out loud. So, Dev, why did you decide you were no longer interested in stage management? Is stage managing a typical stepping stone in artistic directorship? Does it help you?
I don't think it's a typical stepping stone, which doesn't mean it can't be a stepping stone, but I don't think it's typical. I think that everyone should know what a stage manager does, because it's only going to make what you do better. The job of a stage manager is the most important job on a production, because it keeps everything else running. And so the fact that I had that experience early on, I think was instrumental in terms of my being able to look at what I had to work with and know how to keep the gears moving in a way that was going to, you know, optimize what we could do and keep the schedule going and all of that. So I think it did help prepare me, and it's the stage management part of my brain that I think still helps me, you know, to this day, but I don't necessarily think it's a path that, you know, everyone takes, but I think it's a good thing to know a lot about.
Excellent, thank you.
Yep.
Great question, great answer. So this is kind of a general question. We got this a couple times, and so this is for everyone. How did, let's start with this one. Who at Brandeis influenced you the most and why? So for a couple of you, we've already touched on it, but, you know, if anyone wants to jump in and, Deb.
I know I was just talking, but I saw that question come up in the chat and it made me start to think about it. One person that comes to mind immediately is he passed away really recently. He was a theater history professor at Brandeis named John Bush Jones, who was affectionately referred to as JBJ. And, you know, JBJ really, I think he knew I was a director before I did. And I took as many of his classes as I could, and he was probably the Brandeis professor that I kept in touch with the longest after Brandeis. He wrote one of my letters of recommendation for my graduate program. And in thinking about how he really shaped my understanding of theater, well, he was just like the largest well of knowledge, but the idea that, you know, directing is really, you know, it's about the moment to moment work, but it's also understanding the historical and social meaning and position that a piece has in the entire history and canon of the theater. And so not only did he really give me, you know, a huge grounding in the history of musical theater, in the history of theater in general, but also, you know, now allows me, even with new work, to think back on some of the lessons that I learned from him and to know sort of what genre and what tone and what this and what that somebody might be sort of referring to or playing with. And I think about his class a lot. And, you know, he was just a really special person who really wanted the best for his students. And so just giving him a lot of love right now. Yeah.
That's great. I mean, I don't know if anyone else knew him or if anyone has someone else that they wanted to share. Yeah, Bonita.
To share.
Oh, sorry,
Go
Renita.
ahead, Renita. Go ahead,
Both of you were like at the same time.
Oh, okay. For me, it was Arthur Holmberg. I mean, so many people really, you know, there were a lot of people. But Arthur and it was very interesting because we challenged each other. It wasn't the syrupy sort of relationship. And I remember maybe about 3 years after I graduated Brandeis, I asked him to write me a letter of recommendation. I wanted to teach. I was, you know, applying for a job teaching at a college, and he wouldn't write the letter. He said, I think you should be writing.
Oh.
I think I'm
We lost
frozen.
you.
Oh no, that's such a nice story. Right, cut in half. Well, hopefully she comes back on momentarily. But Bonita, do you want to go?
So
Such a great expression that she just froze on. That.
Yes, it's great. I would say, of course, Nancy Armstrong for my voice. Maria Lowry, she challenged me like none other. Like, and I can't thank her enough. She helped me fall in love with the classics.
Mm.
You know, every actor doesn't love Shakespeare, right? I was one of those actors. But just delving in and figuring it out. Also Janet Morrison.
Janet Morrison.
Oh,
Janet.
She made me, Janet challenged me so much. Even she could always tell when I was skating or trying to. And she would hold me to the line. I don't believe you. You gave up. You let it go. And I often laugh and we talk about Janet and Maria and what they just fed into us as actors and how we had to learn, you know, what was it, Henry V, Now Entertain, Conjecture of a Time, when weeping like that. I was like, oh, but I know it. And I know it better than most. And I can do it. And yes, when I had to do, I did Winter's Tale at Brandeis. When I had to do Paulina, which is a massive role for someone who doesn't like Shakespeare, I can only say thank you to Maria and Janet and Nan for just feeding into me and staying on top of me, because I can do it.
Yes, you can. That's awesome. I mean, no, that's great. I didn't plan for this to be like this, such a great Brandeis, like, Denitsa, yes, go for it.
I want to go on record. We're being recorded here, so maybe some of my mentors will see this, but all of the faculty in the program are top notch. And that's one of the reasons I'm sure all of us went to the program. So from Carl Eichste, the reason why I ended up there, to Denise in the costume shop, who I learned everything about everything from her. But Candace, who was one of the costume design professors, but two people truly, Jennifer von Meyhauser, who, while she was teaching at Brandeis, she was basically the costume designer for Law and Order for the 20 years that it went, right? In addition of her TV gig with Law and Order, she would also do theater and film and raise children and travel between New York and Boston. And back then I thought, all right, if Jennifer could do it, I could do it. I didn't realize that I had decided that the person I was going to look up to is Superwoman. And I feel like I'm finding myself now having a very similar sort of life, traveling, raising children, education, and designing. But if it wasn't for Jennifer, I don't think I would have never thought that it was all possible to do it all. And then Bob Moody. I have to mention Bob Moody, who is the charge artist, amazing scene painter. I'll just give one anecdote because he helped me feel confident about what I did. he summoned me after one class with him in drawing and rendering. He summoned me in his office. And I said, oh, shoot, I'm in trouble. Why is he calling me in his office? And he sat me down and he gave me this, he said that there was nothing really he could teach me. And I was like, what do you mean? He says, well, you have such a great work ethic and you come with so much skill to us. And I said, no, I don't know anything. He says, no, you know a lot. And for the rest of my education at Brandeis, I felt confident that I knew a lot. But then looking back, now I really want to know if he did that to all of the students in his class. I really wonder, and I've never been able to, even though we've met over the years, and I always forget to ask him that question, did you do that to all of the students? Because that gave me such a confidence, like, here's this genius, right, telling me there was nothing I could learn from him. Are you kidding? So yeah, Bob Moody and that instant is a lasting thing on me, like an influence. So
that's amazing.
We got Renita.
I know. I don't think we got Renita back. I'm asking also Courtney if who's part of Brandeis, if she's like in the waiting room. I don't know if there's still a waiting room. In the meanwhile, I mean, technically, unfortunately, this is ended, right? So it's 8:15. I don't know if you guys need to leave. I wonder if we could ask maybe one more question, just to kind of push it, if you guys are okay with that, and feel free if people need to leave, totally understand. Oh, Malik, hi Malik. Oh, so excited. I was like thinking maybe. So I was just gonna ask one more question. So I'm seeing a lot of questions specifically about like acting, just like voiceover stuff and acting stuff. Because that's just to one person, we're gonna maybe put if everyone can maybe put up like their socials, if they want people to follow them on social media, if they want people to reach out to them in some other way, maybe we can go around and just sort of say, you know, what's a way people can contact you if you're comfortable with it. So either is it easier to just say it out loud or to type it into the chat? What do you guys want to do?
Type it is fine.
Type it is fine. So yeah, just type in maybe like an Instagram handle, Twitter, whatever you feel like. I mean, it's really up to you. An email if you feel like people can email you. LinkedIn if you prefer LinkedIn, reaching out. And then in the meanwhile, let's end on a question with regards to maybe creating your own work during this whole thing. We all have our own sort of situations that have been sort of stopped because of COVID. I know, you know, for example, you know, Prospect Theater Company and Astoria Theater Company, they're doing their own stuff virtually. I know that Bonita was talking a little bit about mentoring right now, and also voiceover stuff and auditions sometimes happening. So just kind of wanted to touch base if people wanted to, as they do this, maybe respond. Yeah, I think we may have lost Renita, which is sad. I hope she comes on before we say goodbye. Thank you guys, everyone, for coming. I don't know if people are leaving, but it's good to maybe have an idea of how we can contact people. This is great. But anyone want to answer that? Like things that we could do to create like our own opportunities during this time? I think that's a good way to sort of end it on. Deb, please.
Sure. So I was thinking about this question too, because you sent it in advance, and I think it's a question that's sort of on everyone's mind, obviously. I was actually in callbacks for a big musical on March 12th. That musical didn't happen. But my theater company in Queens, I just put the website up on the chat, we pivoted immediately, and a musical theater writer that is a friend was, in her anxiety in the first weekend of the shutdown, she was amassing a group of musical theater writers and actors who wanted to do an online musical theater project. And I knew that she was putting together some great people. She emailed me, and I wrote back and I said, let's chat about this because maybe there's a collaboration. And so we talked, and I said, you know, it seems like this is a really great project. I know a lot of the people that are involved, and I have some other folks that I can bring on board, but it seems like this project needs some institutional support. And we just lost our spring musical. So in that moment, a 6-week musical theater endeavor became reality, and we had 6 different teams of different writers and actors putting together new short musicals that were filmed in isolation, and then we had a professional video editor put all the pieces together, and we streamed them as YouTube events every Friday night for 6 weeks. and they are still actually available on our YouTube page. I actually didn't put that up, but I will.
I saw it. If you just search Dev and her theater company, you'll be able to find it on YouTube. It's really good.
So they are all, thank you. And so they're all about the pandemic in some way. And what's really interesting to revisit them now is that, you know, it was in the early days and they were written, you know, just keep in mind, they were all written in March and April. So it's interesting to like sort of see even the time capsule of work that was created earlier in this period. And I definitely want to give other people an opportunity to say something, but I'll just add that, you know, I think that, you know, right now, as, you know, awful and crazy and strange as it is that, you know, everything is shut down, we sort of have a palette with which to create and to connect. I just did an online Zoom workshop of a new musical that had a reading yesterday. It was very weird, but it was a great reminder that the intent and the need to be storytellers and to be artists remains. And that I would say to anybody out there that, you know, and it was important for me to realize this too, not to think of it as a replacement, but to think of it as something that you need right now. And that, you know, I met a writer on this project in March who is awesome and we really hit it off. We've never met in person, but we really want to work together again. And so, you know, the opportunity to, you know, sort of meet now in the ways that we can, create work now in the ways that we can, but also hope and promise, you know, hope and make plans for the future, I think is really important. And, you know, a Zoom membership is really cheap and you can invite people to hear a new play and suddenly, you know, you're on your way to making edits and changes and to meeting some new people. I know it sounds kind of like pie in the sky, but I think that just the act of doing that keeps, you know, the hope and the love alive for what comes next.
And I think that's important. I'm glad you mentioned that because I think that, you know, we're not replacing theater. Theater cannot be replaced. It just can't. And we're not going to try. But I think it is, like you said, important to create work still. So I love that people are pivoting in these ways. And, you know, with the Zoom readings on, you know, with like stage readings or like Zoom readings, you know, there is something to be said about different eyes on it that might not be able to get to New York or might not be able to get to San Diego and see these shows, that they now have the opportunity to have more eyes on them, and you never know. So I'm trying to think of positive stuff there. But Renita, thank you. I'm so glad you came back. We're running a little late, so we're just ending it on this one last question. If Renita, you wanted to write down, I don't know if you feel comfortable at all, it's totally up to you, but any way that people maybe be able to follow up with you, contact you, find you, just in case they had a question later on, if you want to type it in the chat. And then the question we're just ending on is, what are ways to create as a theater artist during this time, or what are ways that you've been creating or being active in as a theater artist?
I think I'm probably repeating everyone when they're saying that we have to keep creating, that what we're creating is something new. It's not live theater. Live theater is what we all know. It's that guy in the seat in the next row that won't get off the cell phone. You know, it's the smells, it's the breath, it's the spit, and so we know we won't get that. But I just keep creating. We just have to keep creating and embrace the fact, the ways that we have an opportunity to be more expansive.
Yeah. And Renita, have you been writing a lot during this time?
I have.
Good.
I've in a few virtual festivals, and I'm working on a piece that I was working on before this, a play about the life of Medgar Evers' wife, Myrlie Evers. And so writing my first civil rights piece.
Excellent. Amazing. Bonita, I know you were gonna chat too. You already mic is off. So yeah.
Yeah, so I am, like I said before, I've learned a new skill set. Well, it was already in me, as you said. So I'm delving deeply into the world of voiceover, animation, voicing Grammy and Through the Woods, the animated series for children, but also doing a pilot It's the weirdest thing. Been doing a pilot on Zoom, playing this character and getting developing this character for this new pilot that's coming up, and everything is done virtually, which is you know, I mean, and we have to make that pivot. But I want to say that Broadway is coming back, theater is coming back, and it is coming back stronger, better. We're going to be safer, you know, because it is needed. There is a group of people that think that it is not needed, but it is needed. The storytellers are needed. We are needed. The story writers, the stage managers, the costume designers. We are a community that we are needed. We are valuable, and yeah, that's what I have to say.
Yes. No, people are going to flock. Like as soon as we're able to, yes, essential, Malik. People are going to flock to it.
Essential is the
flock
word.
to theater as soon as, like, you know, things open up in a safe way, and people are just going to be like, I needed this. This is so different from, there might be more of an appreciation and a gratitude for what, you know, you all can do.
Yes.
Denitsa, did you want to quickly sort of end this?
I just want to speak for all of my designer colleagues. You know, I'm very much involved with our union, and currently it's a dark period of our history, but everyone believes the theater will come back. It's essential, and everyone is just trying to stay positive. Personally, I've taken the time to really, for sort of self-reflection and professional development. Really, I'm learning new skills. I've taken a number of classes when it comes to digital technologies, digital sculpting, rendering, concept design. So a little bit more film related, but this is a time that was really actually helpful to me, because usually we don't have the time for that. So, you know, it's like, how do you make this horrible time that we're going through into a positive? And on a different note, let's not forget about all of these movements that are happening in society currently. This is really allowing, and I'll speak for myself, to take a moment and look at, you know, theater history, or theater through history, present theater, right? How are we going to change? What are the changes that are coming up because of the issues that are happening? So I've taken it upon myself to diversify what we educate our students. I've taken upon myself to decolonize theater, costume history, which is a huge, it will take years and years to do. And so there's so much, in a way, going on in a time when we're not doing as much. But I think maybe it was meant to be that way, to take a break and to examine ourselves, examine our culture, examine theater. And I think on the other end, I think Bonita said, we'll be better. We'll be better. I strongly believe it.
I mean, I could not have imagined a better way to end that. That is so amazing. Thank you. And thank you all. I mean, this has just been, I knew it was going to be good, guys. I knew it, but it's even more amazing than I thought. This was so fantastic. Thank you guys all for participating in this, for your incredible leadership and mentorship during this time. Malik, did you want to say something as well? Thank you guys all for attending too.
Yeah, I'm not sure if the sound is coming in.
This
is, you know, I knew that this group, I know each of the panelists individually, and I thought this would be intriguing, interesting, but you all just blew my mind and exceeded my expectations. I'm so thrilled that you said yes, and so thrilled that you shared your stories and your hearts. It's been amazing. So thank you so much for joining us today, and thanks to the audience.